Okay. Hi, everyone. For those of you who don't already know me, my name is Shannon Bador, and for this week, I will be doing our professional learning module, and the topic for this week is on incorporating SEL, or for long, social emotional learning, and mindfulness in teaching. I want to do this topic because it's actually something I really did want to research for my own future teaching practices, and even right now in my student teaching placement. Some strategies I can do to help my students better cope internally and externally with those emotions and inner conflicts and outer conflicts, of course, too. And so it was something I really wanted to focus on, and I found a lot of interesting things in my research and in creating this PowerPoint and providing resources for everyone else. So I hope you enjoy it. Let's get into it. All right, first, for context, what are SEL and mindfulness? Just let's define them so we all know what we're talking about here when we're discussing them within the context of early childhood education and teaching. So, social emotional learning, or what it's commonly called as is SEL, is a process that helps individuals develop skills that deal with building relationships, setting goals, and managing their emotions. And SEL is typically comprised of 5 competencies that we refer to as self-awareness, so being aware of how what you are doing is affecting others, being just aware of what you're personally doing in these situations, in these social emotional situations. Self-management, how you manage your personal emotions and reactions and feelings in these situations. Social awareness, being aware of socially how you're affecting that environment and how you are influencing your your interactions, and just being aware socially of what is going on around you and how you are affecting that and contributing to that. Relationship skills, it goes all over what would be with that, and also decision making is the other competency of SEL, and we'll talk a little bit more about those later. And then mindfulness, on the other hand, it's actually, we're going to use a definition here from one of our readings this week. I believe it is our third reading. This is from waterford.org. And from this reading that talks about mindfulness in the classroom and with young children, they define it as a calming technique that involves the process of focusing your attention in the present with moment by moment awareness of sensations, thoughts, and feelings that you experience. So you're taking that time to be aware of what's going on internally with you, what you're feeling, what you're thinking about, and being able to focus strictly on that and being in that moment to take time to be aware of that and not focusing on what's going on around you with other stimuli or other responsibilities or tasks that are left to do. You're able just to focus on you in that moment and be mindful of what you are doing and how you are feeling. And additionally, this awareness involves being able to stay grounded in your surroundings, especially when experiencing feelings of stress or overwhelmingness. So being able to recenter yourself and just be focused on the present, what you're currently doing and currently feeling, and not letting those feelings of stress or overwhelmingness take over, being able to, just refocus yourself. And so that's another big part of mindfulness. And then along with that awareness we just talked about, mindfulness also includes an attitude of acceptance and curiosity towards your thoughts and emotions. So you look at them and you want to learn more about them and understand why I'm feeling this way or why I think this. You're open to that. You're curious about it. You're not purposefully ignoring it and being ignorant to it. You actually want to learn about that and figure out, why am I feeling this way and what can I do to help myself? Or how can I acknowledge this so I can move forward? It's another big part of mindfulness. So those are SEL and mindfulness for context. And now let's talk about how they impact us in the ECE world with teaching and how they just impact that ECE world in general. So we're first going to talk about the impact of SEL and with incorporating that in the classroom, referencing our second reading, which was one of the 2 from Berkeley's Greater Good magazine. And in this article, we talk a lot about the impact that SEL can have on us as teachers. So to give a quote from there, they say that teaching students emotional and relationship skills, sorry, that's my Siri going off. So teaching students emotional and relationship skills compels a teacher to reflect on their own social emotional competencies, which can be within and outside of the classroom. So as we're teaching students these important lessons about handling and dealing with their own emotions and others and those conflicts and those social conflicts and equipping them with the skills they need to be successful and to keep healthy relationships, we're also able to reflect on our own social emotional competencies and how we are doing with that, with how we communicate with our students, our colleagues, and just anyone in our lives. It doesn't even have to be within that ECE world or within our classroom or school or district. It can be anyone in our lives. It really can help us reflect on that too in our personal relationships and how we handle social emotional conflicts. And then they say that personally honing in on the same SEL skills that we as teachers model and help our students adopt in order to have more successful SEL implementations in the classroom will also result in us reaping those rewards of greater mental health and more effective teaching. We're going to be able to teach more effectively if we can help our students be able to socially and emotionally regulate themselves. And we're also going to reap those rewards of greater mental health along with our students, and that we're going to be able to take better care of ourselves because we're learning those skills and reflecting on the skills that we're teaching as we're simultaneously. And then they mentioned that teacher well-being is increased by this because it gives us that opportunity to practice what we preach and ensuring that we're participating in the self-care and regulation habits that we are expected to promote and understand, which is the best way to do that because then we're actually teaching what we know. We always say that we're supposed to, as teachers, if we're going to teach something, we need to practice what we preach and be able to, if we're going to promote this to students and tell them that it should be important to them and that they should be practicing it, then we also need to be that example in in and outside of the classroom. It doesn't even have to be when we're directly teaching. Our students should be able to see that we care about that at any time that they see us. So that translates not just with being experts on literacy and math and knowing the content that we're teaching there, but also knowing the content with SEL and the skills and competencies that we're training our students to be proficient in. We also need to be proficient in, prioritize, and talk about why, when we tell students that these are for their good and that this helps them, we also need to be promoting that ourselves and showing that we care about that because they care about we care about too as teachers. So that also translates to SEL. And then utilizing SEL in the classroom also helps us maintain or restore the meaning in the profession. The article explores that can come along with possessing personal motivation and satisfaction that we otherwise can lose sight of with the stresses and demands that consume us, Teacher burnout is still a very real issue, especially with first-year teachers and early teachers. And so as we're all getting ready to graduate and go into the field of teaching, it's going to be important that we find outlets and resources that help us stay well taken care of, to protect our well-being, that help us so that we can stay motivated and energized in the classroom so that we are at our best for our students. And so SEL is a great thing to practice for that, to make sure that we're keeping that motivation and that we still have that meaning in the profession. It's a great way to find that meaning in our profession still, especially when it seems hard to, with all of the demands that come along with that. And it is hard teaching. It's a lot of times it's not easy. And so this is a great way to remind us of why we did this, the passion that we have for this and how we want to help our children. And being with that, we need to take care of ourselves too so we can take care of our students. So SEL greatly helps with that. And then we have a little bit more on that, a little bit more on the impact of teachers we're going to talk about. And then also the article explores the impact that SEL has on students. So another thing they talk about with teachers specifically is what they call micro moves, or as they define, these are small actions by an individual or group. In this case, it would be for teachers a school that brings to bring large actions in a school. So it's about those small actions that are transformed into larger actions as a whole, because they go really a long way, and they can help us feel less alone and the whole community more embraced. So a good example of this might be at teacher institutes or other regular staff meetings or in the teacher's lounge, having something up or doing regular check-ins to make sure that your colleagues and your staff are doing okay, and just saying, hey, is there anything you need? Are you struggling right now? How are you socially and emotionally? And being able to show that you care and promoting that humanity over loneliness and isolation. You really need that community as a teacher, and so part of that is doing these check-ins. So for schools to promote that would be a huge thing, and that's what helps teachers feel more supportive. So that's a way that schools can implement SEL and also positively impact teachers when we have that prioritized and promoted in schools. And then also SEL can positively influence the student-teacher relationship, which is obviously something that should already be very important to us as teachers. So they say that practicing SEL can help us be more conscious of and intentional towards our relationships with our students, because it can remind us, as we're exploring these topics, that having that caring and positive relationship with each of them increases motivation and academic success. So it's kind of like that I don't want to say domino effect, but that's the best way I can think of it right now. It kind of creates that effect of like a waterfall, maybe is better, but you start with SEL, and then that helps you form close relationships that are full of care and trust and positivity with your students. And then that connects the link between those, positive relationships and increased student motivation and academic success, because they feel that they're in an environment where they're supported by their teacher and they feel that they can trust their teacher. They are going to perform better academically and feel more motivated to do their work. So that's another great reason for why we should be promoting SEL in the classroom and incorporating it. And they say that it can also aid us with our most challenging students, those students, that really just we struggle with trying to understand them, because it can help us respond to them with that better sense of understanding and compassion, rather than what we sometimes might go to with shame and punishment, and not always consciously even, but it can help us maintain or improve our relationships with those students too, because rather than us reacting with shame and punishment, we learn more strategies that can help us better react with those understanding compassion. That's what those students need to see. They need to see us having compassion for them and showing that we care about them, and also see us try to understand them, because that's how we're going to connect with them better and get through to them better. So SEL really helps with that too. And then also not just student-teacher relationships, but also the relationships between students are going to be strengthened by SEL. Because they say that SEL helps them cultivate a greater sense of community, belonging, and acceptance in the classroom. So those peer relationships are strengthened because students are equipped with that greater ability to use those skills to help them navigate those conflicts and communicate more openly. So then, as an effect, everyone's going to feel more of that sense of belonging and acceptance from their peers, and it's going to make the classroom community tighter, and it's going to make everyone just feel more welcomed and close with each other, and it's going to feel more like a community than just, this is my class. So that's another big thing with SEL and how it can improve those student relationships too. And then let's talk a little bit more about mindfulness now. So in our third reading, that one from waterford.org, it talks about why mindfulness strengthens social emotional development and academic achievement. And it talks about a lot of different ways that it can help students, but also this can be applied to teachers, families, or just anyone else involved in the ECE school community. So they reference some really interesting neuroscience research in the article that proves that mindfulness, which is something we might already know, but let's just go over it still, that mindfulness can significantly reduce stress and anxiety, which can apply to everyone in that ECE community when we practice that. And they list many positive effects of it. They say that there's an increased attention span and that ability to regulate negative emotions, compassion, self-awareness, memory, and introspection. all skills here that students need to be equipped for social, emotional success in school, and just academically too, that attention span to be able to recenter their mind to focus on whatever they need to be focused on at the time and not let other stimuli take them away from that. And they're able to better regulate their negative emotions. They're better able to recognize them and deal with them in a healthy way. And they're going to have that increased compassion for others. They're going to be more self-aware of what they're doing, better memory, introspection, and then we're going to see decreases in anxiety too. Because with mindfulness, there's just a big already link between that and anxiety and stress and decreasing those. And then that power and frequency of negative emotions that helps with too. So it's going to help students overall just feel so much more calm and relaxed in the classroom. And then the reading also discusses the benefits that mindfulness has proven to have in and out of the classroom. They talk about how it strengthens students' social skills, their ability to communicate in a productive manner with others, to regulate their emotions that they're feeling, to have, like we said before, compassion. Also strengthens their self-esteem, so their belief in themselves, that self-motivation, that increases with it. They don't just rely on others to motivate them. Their sleep habits, which, is such a huge thing. Students really, two of the biggest things they need to be successful in school in all aspects is sleep and food. So sleep habits, the fact that mindfulness has such a big link with that too, to strengthen that's such a huge, it's huge, and really shows why we need to incorporate that in teaching. And then academic achievement, we see links between that too, and just focus in general, being for students to be able to focus. And then it reduces issues with mental health and their stress, kind of like we talked about before, but also bullying and fatigue. They're more mindful of what they think and they say and they do, how it affects others with bullying. And then fatigue, kind of what we talked about before with sleep. They see a decrease then in fatigue. And then students with disabilities particularly are going to benefit because mindfulness can help them learn and adopt social emotional skills to better connect with their peers. And an example I pulled from the article, they talk about ADHD specifically. And they say that it's shown that students with ADHD, when they have, mindfulness is incorporated, they tend to have higher grades and lower instances of emotional disruption when they experience that mindfulness training versus none at all. So it's gratefully helping them too, academically, and also just with, handling their emotions. And when those disruptions come in of distraction or something else, they're able to regulate that better and get their minds back refocused. So it greatly helps students with ADHD and other disabilities too, because they adopt better social emotional skills to be connected with peers and to regulate themselves. But the big idea that I really want to drive in here is how SEL and mindfulness can make an impact, the biggest impact, when they're taught to children together. So looking at the first article from Berkeley's Greater Good magazine that was listed in the resources for this week's module, how SEL and mindfulness can work together. It details how, we just said before, they can have the biggest impact both not just in the classroom but outside of the classroom too when they're taught to children together. So what is the reason for this? Why should we be doing this? Why should they be taught and learn together rather than just focused on separately? So firstly, mindfulness and SEL, the approaches of them are different, and the focuses that they have actually lack what the other has. So SEL uses what the article deems an outside-in approach and focuses on teaching children social emotional skills that they can use to resolve various conflicts. So it's more about what's going on around them. They evaluate the situation. They're given a scenario. They're saying, do this to respond, and they're more responding to an external situation, and then they react, and then they think internally more about how they handled it. Versus, contrastly, mindfulness functions with that inside-out mindset that focuses on building the awareness and connections between emotions, thoughts, and bodily sensations. So being more aware of what's going on internally, and then so they can better regulate those emotions and have less intense reactions or less out of control reactions, which then, of course, consequently affects those outer experiences. But as you see, one is more focused on what's going on externally, one internally, so they both kind of lack the other. So giving students something that the other does not offer, that they need to, we should be doing that because it helps them be more just fully successful with managing and expressing those emotions and their social reactions, because we can offset what the other lacks to make sure that they're getting, that whole picture there. They're getting everything they need to be best equipped. Continually. So when integrated, SEL and mindfulness provide a higher potential for both children and adults' growth and development. And the 5 SEL competencies that we discussed earlier, to embody them more fully. So let's look at those specifically. So the collaboration between SEL and mindfulness, it affects self-awareness positively, in that it deepens self-awareness because that mindfulness practice of focusing attention and self-compassion can enhance that, They're learning how to keep their attention focused on one thing and not letting that, fade off into something else, and they're taught self-compassion to care for themselves. So then they can be more self-aware of what's going on in their head. And then self-management, to be able to manage their emotions and their thoughts and their reactions, and that ability to use conflict resolution in a more creative manner and verbally express those feelings in a way that's more emotionally balanced. That's going to be heightened by mindfulness, because that's what mindfulness causes that increase in emotional regulation skills. So when they have that increase in emotional regulation skills, they're better able to use conflict resolution in that productive, creative manner and be more emotionally balanced in how they express their feelings and not let those get out of control then. So managing themselves in these conflicts is what is improved with mindfulness. And then social awareness, that ability to have empathy, see someone else's suffering and respond, in an appropriate manner, of course, increases with mindfulness, because it helps us better regulate emotions in a difficult situation rather than let them overwhelm us, and they can better help others with the same as a result. So just being more socially aware with that social awareness, it when we can better regulate our emotions in these situations, we're going to be able to respond better to others and see what's going on with others too, and better help others in these conflicts, and not just ourselves but others is the big thing with this one. And then relationship skills, compassion is going to be enhanced by mindfulness. So students can approach SEL skills involving themselves and others with a more sensitive understanding, because they have that increase in compassion. They can be more sensitive and understand in a more sensitive manner, try to understand at least what's, the other person might be feeling or other people involved might be feeling rather than just themselves. So that's going to improve their relationship skills and to keep their relationships productive and healthy. And then decision making, that cognitive flexibility and creativity are going to be heightened by mindfulness too. So then students have a larger repertoire of responses to situations that are challenging, because they've increased their cognitive flexibility to be able to adapt to different situations and respond in the most appropriate way also, is what they found. So overall, what else does this teach us about the impact of SEL mindfulness on schools, families, and ECE as a whole? We talked a lot about how it impacts us as teachers, and it impacts our students, of course. But how does it trickle over to schools and families and the field of early childhood education? So with schools, the school community is going to be and feel more supportive, connected, and warm if those within it are trained well in SEL and mindfulness, along with the associated helpful techniques. We just talked about how it affects students and teachers positively. So if everyone is reaping those benefits and those rewards, you're gonna see it. You're gonna feel the difference in when they're getting that self-care and they're getting what they need to be, skills they need to be equipped with to be socially and emotionally successful. And then consequently, SEL and mindfulness incorporations strengthen school reputations and performance, because those within and outside of it they can see the difference in SEL skills, support, and overall community by how they're promoted in practice too. So that's going to, affect school performance, because we've talked about how academic performance is improved by SEL and mindfulness, and then their reputation. You're going to see a stronger, more united school community too when these are promoted, and they promote, again, that humanity over loneliness. And then with families, they're going to see that difference, kind of tying in with the schools, how we talked about. They're going to see the difference in their children, teachers, and the school when SEL and mindfulness are practiced and promoted, with how they behave, with how their children behave, and the teachers and everyone involved behave, how they handle those emotions and conflicts, and use their mindfulness to make careful choices. Families will see the results and the differences when they are taught that and when that is promoted. And this can be extended to families too, and we can encourage them as teachers to do the same at home for themselves and their children. Because as we know, consistency and routines at school are just, we've learned, are so important for young children, just that consistency. And we are taught to do that with our routines and how we teach and how we respond to behaviors with our own classroom management. So doing everything we can, of course, too, to have that consistency between the home and school environments, that also is something that we should be thinking about with our SEL and mindfulness, and if there's ways that we can connect those between home and school so that children feel as much consistency as they can. And SEL and mindfulness is a big one, actually, to have that consistency with, for kids to be practicing that outside of the school environment. And then this, with ECE. So we've kind of already touched on this. Everything we've talked about shows the positive impact that ECE gets from SEL and mindfulness. So if those are implemented and normalized in all ECE settings, we've seen how socially and emotionally it positively affects those involved. Just looking at how it's affected the schools, the families, the teachers, the students, that's all the world of ECE. So everything we've discussed just shows how much it impacts ECE as a whole and improves the well-being of everyone involved in this world. So let's just go over, if you haven't already figured out why it's important in ECE, let's kind of talk a little bit more about that. So first of all, the skills associated with SEL and mindfulness make a large impact on well-being and one's ability to function and deal with internal and external conflicts. So we're talking about the people again in ECE. The children and teachers need to be able to deal with internal and external conflicts in a healthy manner, and also protect their well-being in order to perform the best they can. So teaching children these skills when they're young as ECE learners is going to help them learn how to cooperatively work and play among others better too. So it's important in ECE because this is the time when children are just the most impressionable, and when this is the foundation. So part of that foundation of not just teaching them their academics, but also how to handle conflicts and how to be among others and handle their emotions and their reactions healthily, and help them do that so they can build healthy relationships and have a good school experience is very important. And then researching these methods as educators, it helps us take time to slow down and engage in self-care, which can otherwise be difficult with our demands and time constraints. So, otherwise, it's kind of hard for us to find that time to make sure that we are protecting our peace. So SEL mindfulness, us practicing and promoting it, it gives us our chance to make sure that the demands and time constraints that we're dealing with don't consume us too. And then overall, the school community is going to be strengthened with improvements in SEL and mindfulness capabilities, because teachers and students, as we've talked about, are going to feel and they're going to appear more well taken care of, which families will recognize, which the community will recognize when they see this school. It's going to make us more unified and stronger. And then this offers another family involvement opportunity and benefits, because we talked about how we can provide SEL mindfulness. We can involve them in it too. So part of that is we can give them resources and strategies for them to try at home as a family to keep that consistency going. So this consequently strengthens communication too, though, with us and our families too. Communication is such a big thing. And so this can help us strengthen our communication, but also the communication for the whole family unit and their ability to emotionally express themselves and find inner peace. Again, this is all going back to that consistency for students. If they can have that consistency with SEL and mindfulness at home and school, it's going to be huge for them with their future success and everything. So, now that we talked all about that, let's talk about how we specifically can incorporate and promote SEL and mindfulness in our classroom and teaching practices. So the article, going back to that third article from our readings this week from waterford.org, they actually give so many great ideas for mindfulness activities that we can use in the classroom with our students that are fun and engaging for them too. So one you can do is to teach students about those 5 senses. And a great idea they give is a mindful eating activity where you instruct students to practice careful mindfulness with their senses. So, for example, you might give them a tasty treat like a cookie. They kind of use this kind of example in the article. And they tell you, make sure you have them take time and just focus on and note the flavors and sensations they're tasting. Because it's great practice for them to also just notice on the feelings that they usually experience with their mind. So relating it to tasting a tasty treat and doing that careful thinking and focusing on the little things that are just going on internally. By doing it with this cookie and having them taste those flavors and sensations, it helps them practice that careful mindfulness with their senses and sensing what they're feeling and what they are noticing physically and mentally. Small-scale meditation activities are also really great, and they really appeal to those shorter attention spans that we see with young students. What you can have them do is have them just lay their heads down at their desk or on the floor and put on some calming music and just turn the lights off or have mood lighting and just instruct them to keep their thoughts focused on the music and to recenter them when they begin to wander to other stimuli. It's a great way to have them just focus on one thing and have them practice just centering themselves on something that's calming and consistent. And it's a great thing to do, especially when you notice that your students, they need it. If they come back from recess and they're really high energy and they need a second to calm their bodies and their minds down, this is a great one to use. For stress management, you can try a body scan activity with your students to help them let go of any stress they may be experiencing or holding in their bodies, making them mindful of each sensation they feel in different parts of their bodies and teaching them to let go of any tension or stress they're feeling in there. So they're more mindful of how physically certain stresses might be affecting them. And then also, if you're able to, simple walking meditations really just help students get their wiggles out, they say, while practicing mindfulness. The article talks about that in a more exciting way. So on a brief walk, you can task them with focusing on their surrounding sounds and sights, just simple noticings again, like something very simple for them to focus on and to keep their energy on. And also their personal feelings. You can have them think about how those surrounding sounds and those sights of nature are making them feel. And then once back inside, you can even do a reflection experience with a discussion or journal entry so students can more deeply reflect on how that made them feel and acknowledging those inner thoughts and feelings again. So these are all great ways to incorporate mindfulness. And then to go along with that, I also wrote down some great ideas for incorporating SEL in the classroom in your teaching practices. So to do that crossover, we talk about like integrating, across subjects, and you can integrate SEL into literacy with your read alouds, and you can read and discuss books that cover those SEL topics, lessons, and conflicts. There's so many great ones out there, and that's one of the resources that I'll talk about in just a second that you can review if you want some ideas. But, having those read alouds, those mentor texts, a lot of times can be great ways to introduce these SEL topics and lessons and different types of conflicts that students might be dealing with in a way that they better understand, especially if you're struggling to find a way to explain it to them that will make sense. Books can really help aid that and give them more of a visual to see what you're talking about. If you're able to, and this is something I think that's really great, having that safe, and comforting calm down corner in your classroom that has SEL resources which could be feelings charts, productive communication strategies for emotions and conflicts, exercises for expressing emotions, gratitude and inner thoughts, all of those things. If you can make it a comfortable and safe and neutral space where they also have access to those tools, instead of just putting them in a corner and having them look at nothing and have nothing to do when they are feeling overwhelmed, having it as an option, not even just something that you just send them to, because letting them choose it too. They can look at the feelings chart and help them work out whatever is going on that they're dealing with internally or externally. It's a great addition to a classroom. And then also just incorporating something for a more natural practice, those SEL style check-ins during daily routines. Maybe during morning meeting, you do a little check-in to see how everyone's feeling, and give your students a chance to practice expressing that. And also, if they haven't been able to, that's a good time to check in with everyone and make sure everyone's doing all right. So morning meetings, circle time, kind of similar to that, or even just when they're walking in to start the day, asking each student how they are. Doing that also just really can go a long way. And just integrating collaborative learning strategies too as much as possible, so students can problem solve together rather than experience more isolation, because having them just work independent so much, or doing lessons and teaching them these important SEL lessons and then and having them reflect independently, they don't get that benefit of fresh inputs and ideas. So even not just during SEL lessons, but other lessons, having them collaborate helps them practice working with others and problem solving together, and being able to listen to others and hear other ideas and that are not always like theirs, and say, hey, that's not bad, that's a good thing too. And they can learn from different experiences and thoughts. So that also just really goes a long way with SEL and mindfulness. And just note, again, don't just pick one or the other. Say, I'm only going to focus on SEL or mindfulness. The big point of this week is talking about how we should be incorporating both equally, because we've learned that they really do have the largest impact when they're taught together, because they do make up for what the other lacks. So find a way to incorporate a little bit of both and have them equally represented in your classroom to best help your students be as well-rounded as they can be, is the big lesson here. So right here, when you get a chance, because you will need to do this for the discussion board this week, it's only 5 minutes, because you're practicing something that you might potentially want to do in your own classroom to go along with that mindfulness activity we talked about for an idea, that small scale meditation. For you get to try it now on the slide and give yourself a little time, practice what we talked about with teachers, taking time to care for yourself and protect your peace. This is a great way to do that. So this is similar to the one from slide 10. You're going to lay down or rest your head on a comfortable spot with minimal to no lighting. Play this music, and then just do your best to keep your thoughts focused on the music. And if you notice your mind wandering, like just how we talked about with kids, try to do your best to refocus it back on the music. And then also, before you begin, make note of how your mind and body feels before you start this. Practice that mindfulness in acknowledging the sensations that you're feeling. And then do the same after and see if anything changed. See if this helped at all, or relieved any tension, or helped you relax better. Make note of what changes you notice. Hopefully it's better changes, of course. That's the goal. It should be the goal. And then also just make note of how this may help students when they need a break or just finished a high energy or demanding task. So also reflect on, after you do this, how this would help students in the classroom, your young students, your ECE students, how that would help them too. So whenever you get a chance, go ahead and do this if you want to do it now or do it later. You'll just need to have it done for the discussion board, but the goal of this activity is for you to see how mindfulness activities like this in the classroom can go a long way by practicing it yourself, and also engaging in, again, those self-care practices that we talked about for teachers with SEL and mindfulness, giving you a chance to do that and see the effect it can have, and how we said those small things like this can go a really long way. So that's our interactive activity for you. All right. And then at the end here, I did include some extra resources. So if you do want to learn more about how you can incorporate SEL and mindfulness in your teaching practices and your classroom environment, I found these resources that provide engaging and developmentally appropriate ideas. So first, from We Are Teachers, I found this article that has, I think I made a typo here. It's 15, I think, actually. I thought it was 55. I'll double check. But it has some social skills books that you can use to teach important SEL and mindfulness lessons and techniques. So those, like I talked about earlier, the read alouds, how they can go such a long way with connecting literacy and connecting students to the SEL topic. Maybe if you're struggling to understand it, you can use literacy and those visuals that these picture books often offer for kids to help them better understand the topic. I found also a website article that highlights 6 steps that you can use to effectively implement a classroom calming corner. If you're looking for ideas and are wondering where should I start, this is a great resource. I also found a great list of more relaxing music, short meditation videos that you can use for mindfulness and meditation breaks in your classroom, especially if you like the one that you do here for the interactive activity. And then here's also some other ideas for implementing SEL mindfulness in your classroom from a classroom teacher herself. And then I got this from my CT at my student teaching placement. I'm in a school in Unit 5, and this is their kindergarten SEL unit guides. So if you want some ideas for some SEL units that you could teach a lesson on, or a unit that you could use in your own classroom and cover, this also is a really great resource that I found. It includes strategies and mentor texts and guided questions, so it's really a great resource too. And let's just go ahead and we're just going to sum this up. So, in summation, what we can learn from this module is that SEL and mindfulness can and should be integrated in the ECE classroom or any ECE setting for that matter. To be successful in school and life, children need to be equipped with the social, emotional, as well as mindfulness skills to effectively communicate, problem solve, and understand their own and others' emotions. So by promoting their well-being, we are also helping them feel their personal best every day in and outside of school. We talked about how we can equip them with those skills, and you're going to see the effects everywhere. And this also affects us as educators, along with schools and families as a whole, because as we practice and encourage these methods ourselves, they can improve our mood, capabilities, and pride in our school community, and just in our job in general too. So it's very important to remember that SEL and mindfulness are prioritized equally and taught in unison though, because as they each are really the most effective when the other fills in the gaps of what one lacks. So it's just so important for us to find a way to teach those in unison. And then this way, students are just going to be as well-rounded as they can be in handling their own feelings and emotions, and in dealing with external emotional and social conflicts. Because doing so is how we are going to best set them up for success and show that we deeply care about their welfare and happiness. And that is the end. I really hope you enjoyed this presentation and learned a lot about how you can incorporate SEL and mindfulness in teaching and why it is important in the field of ECE. Hope you enjoy the resources and the discussion questions this week. And thank you.